Hi, this is State Representative Mark Gillen with our legislative report. I have with me here Lieutenant Jim Herr from the Exeter Township Fire Department, the Rifton Station, and Jim has been so gracious to share a few minutes with us, take a look at some of the equipment, and we have another special element of the program. But first, I'd like to get to know you a little bit, Jim. How long have you been serving here at Exeter Township Fire Department, and how long have you been in the business, if you will, in general, fighting fires?
Well, I've been here for 4 years now. I actually started out before the merger actually happened. So I was down at the Stonersville station, which was all just Stonersville at the time. But I started out there, then the merger. So I've been here for 4 total years between the two departments, and now it's all one. Overall, I've been in the fire service for 22 years now. Started out as a junior firefighter, but back then it was the Boy Scouts Explorer Post, which I started out in the city of Reading doing that. And I've been actually volunteering with the city of Reading also. So I've been for 22 years, and I have 10 years of military firefighter experience under my belt.
Tremendous. Thank you for your military service as well. A number of years ago, I was involved in firefighting. I know it's changed substantially. I used to throw Scott Air Pack on. In your experience over the course of the last generation, how has the business, the equipment, the apparatus, and the techniques in firefighting changed?
They changed tremendously for the better. The air packs have gotten a lighter, so it helps us to maneuver better in the fires and stuff like that. You can breathe air a little bit longer than what you could back then. So like we have 45-minute bottles on all our trucks, which we have Scott air packs here. 45-minute bottles goes for about a half hour. Before that, they used to be, and these are composite cylinders, which makes everything a little bit lighter. The cylinders back then were all aluminum or steel, which were a lot heavier, and those were only like 3,000 cylinders, so that you could get roughly 22 minutes per bottle, something like that, maybe even less, depends on your intake and the breathing and stuff like that.
In a few minutes, we're going to go back and look at some of the equipment, but I know as a borough official, we put out more than $750,000 for an individual piece of equipment. What are we looking at in terms of cost, maybe even percentages of your budget, which are going toward equipment and the purchase and the maintenance of it?
I would say probably between fuel costs and vehicle maintenance to upkeep and everything, you're probably looking at maybe half of our budget going to keeping our trucks in operation.
And you've got a substantial number of personnel that are supporting the work here. From what I understand, most of them are volunteers, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Well, from a state legislator's perspective, I want to say publicly thank you to the Exeter Township community for supporting this fire department through a variety of means, because if the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania were to attempt to pick up the tab for firefighting across the entire state of Pennsylvania, it would run into the billions of dollars. And you're doing some of the heavy lifting here and raising some independent dollars for it, and for that we're very, very grateful. When I look behind me and I see a large piece of equipment and I see a smaller piece of apparatus, and I go to your website and I see rescue boats, are you an anomaly with regard to what you're doing on the river in rescuing in aquatic situations?
Yeah, we actually do pretty much every kind of thing possible. We do the water rescue, structure fires, vehicle accidents, everything. So we're pretty much well-rounded when it comes to all that. And we have 2 actual boats that we have for water rescue. So, and we're part of sort of a task force, you can say, for the water rescue. So when there's a water rescue in the Schuylkill River, or even up in Kirchner Dam up in Hamburg, we will go and respond to that if called.
Now, of course, Reading itself the municipal fire department there has some rescue boats, and they do aquatic. How many other departments, as we go north on the Schuylkill River through Wyomissing or Spring, would actually be involved in aquatic rescues in a companion way with you?
I would say probably outside of us, you're looking at maybe one other department that's close by that's into the water rescue, and that is actually City of Reading.
It wasn't that long ago, there was a media account of a young man who was, I think, in a kayak, and he tipped over and ended up in the river, and your department was notably involved in rescuing him and saving his life. Could you shed a few extra details on that situation for us?
I'm not 100% sure on all the details. I know Tim Schaefer is the one that saved the man's life. He was also helped by Jim Sanchez and one other individual I'm not sure of, but they pretty much, it was, he tipped over, and Tim Schaefer actually went out into the water to get him out of the water, while Jim Sanchez and the other firefighter assisted.
It reminds me of something that happened just a couple days ago with my children, not that they were canoeing or kayaking on the river. We were standing on the banks of the Schuylkill River, and they were looking down, and they could see the bottom, just a foot or two down there. And one of my children remarked to me, "Dad, I think I could walk across this river." And I go, "Well, hold on just a second here. Do you think you could walk across that part over there? You can't really see what's happening there in the main channel. It's substantially deeper than you might imagine."
Mm-hmm.
Can you share with us in some precautionary ways how someone who is swimming, boating, fishing, wading might exercise some good judgment to keep you out of the situation where you have to rescue them?
The only good judgment I can say is watch the way the water, how rapid the water's moving, the way the currents are going. The shallower the water is, the more treacherous it actually is sometimes. And being, there's pockets throughout the Schuylkill River that you're gonna have to watch out for that are a lot deeper. You may think you're in 2 feet of water, but right next to it could be a hole that you're down 6, 8 feet.
Yeah, as I assess from a distance what you're doing over here, I look and I see relatively urban dense housing stock. I see very active highways, Route 422. The Schuylkill River is in your backyard. I see a lot of diversity, including rugged terrain over here at Neversink Mountain. Does this department deploy more equipment and more skill sets on the average, maybe than a department that doesn't face these kind of challenges in a commensurate way?
For the most part, yes. Like, we have brush trucks here that will assist with brush fires on the mountain. We have, with all the housing that's around here, structure fires, different kind of fire alarms that we respond to, carbon monoxide alarms. We also, building collapses we could respond to at any given time, vehicle accidents, and we run a big part of doing medical calls too. When our ambulance service is out of the township or busy on other calls, we are called to go and help respond to assist, because you got other county companies coming in.
So there's a very strong collateral relationship amongst the emergency services. I'm an emergency medical technician. I'm not currently running, so I have a fairly good sense of where you're coming from with that relationship there. All right, you get the call. Is there a call above all that the department kind of sucks it up and says, "Hey, this is the real deal. This is a big challenge. This is not a fender bender. This is not a brush fire in somebody's backyard"? There's really a heightened awareness. I know when these engines leave, everybody's 100% full-time, 24/7, ready to go. But take us through one of those calls that's a little bit tougher.
One of the tougher calls that we probably had, and this was back probably beginning of the springtime, we had a car actually right up the road here. He misjudged the turn and actually went into one of the buildings there. The car caught on fire. Person was partially ejected, so they had to put out the fire to the vehicle, make sure it didn't get into the structure. also pull the person away from the vehicle to safety and start working on him to get him to where he had to be so the medical personnel can take him and transport him to the hospital and control all the fluids and everything. That was one of our biggest ones recently that we've had.
When you're faced with some tough outcomes and you're debriefing and you're walking through the steps of how we can improve this and how can we bolster people emotionally or spiritually, could you give us a little inside peek at some of the training and some of the techniques that you utilize in building people back up?
We usually start from the beginning. We try to get the junior firefighters in here, and we try to work them all the way up through the ranks. We work with them hand in hand. We do ladder operations, just laddering a building, simple building, putting up the ladder, doing some hose line advancements and stuff in our training site that's over there off of Morgantown Road. We do some structural burns to try to get everybody involved. And we also do some state-sanctioned training, which deals with pump operations, with the apparatus, aerial operations, some medical. We do pretty much any kind of training, we do it, and we do it like we have training once a week. Every Tuesday night we have training.
It's a real strong emphasis on training. It
Yes.
sounds very comprehensive. Appreciate those insights. And if you don't mind, if you could take a couple minutes with us, we'd like to look at some of the apparatus and take a closer view of some of the equipment and how it's utilized. So we're going to take a break here for just a couple moments and step back and take a closer look at the fire trucks here at the Exeter Township Fire Department.
Did you know that Act 16 of 1999 honors one of the greatest leaders in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives? The Matthew J. Ryan Legislative Office Building, once known as the Capitol Annex, is located next to the main Capitol building and honors the late Speaker of the House, Matthew J. Ryan. Those who visit this building will observe the magnificent architectural designs providing eloquence and grandeur to the building. Known as one of the greatest members in the history of the Pennsylvania State House, Matthew Ryan started his career in the legislature in 1963 and was elected Speaker in 1981. His charisma and knowledge will forever be reflected in the building now named after this great legislative leader. Now you know.
Welcome back to State Legislative Report. Representative Gillen and I have with me Lieutenant Jim Herr from the Exeter Township Fire Department, the Rifton Station. You know, Jim, you see the bells and whistles, you hear them all the time, the parades, rushing off to fires, but it's not with great frequency we see or hear much about some of the other utility vehicles that you have here at the department. Could you share a little bit of what happens with this vehicle, where it goes, how it's utilized?
Well, this is our brush vehicle. It's the only one that actually can get into the trails up in Neversink Mountain or Mount Penn Mountain for brush fires. Any of our other apparatus that we have would never fit in any of the trails. We use it to put out the brush fires. We have a chainsaw in here to cut trees down or cut branches or anything like that would be involving the fire. We also have a 100-gallon tank on here with a pump that we actually can use a garden hose that comes off the back to help fight the forest fire.
So when we think of large diameter hoses and we think of the more traditional equipment, some folks don't realize that there is a cigarette that's carelessly cast aside, which incidentally Neversink Mountain is just really on the other side of this building. You could go in, you could extinguish, you could fight, and in an area where it's very narrow and very steep, you couldn't get this piece of equipment over there. So in many cases, you can extinguish the fire before it becomes the raging inferno.
Correct.
And the chainsaw back over there looks like somewhere in the range of a 20-inch bar, and so you can do some clearing there. Is it possible that in some cases you're using the chainsaw to open a pathway for larger vehicles? I don't know how much of that you've done. Exactly how would the chainsaw be deployed? Obviously, you're cutting wood.
The chainsaw we actually can use to open up a pathway for us with the Jeep, or we actually have another vehicle called the Argo. It has 6 wheels on it, 3 on each side, and has another portable tank on it that hauls water and personnel into the fire. The chainsaw is actually used for cutting more paths, or if we have a tree that's on fire inside, we'll cut that tree down so it doesn't do any further damage to other trees that are surrounding.
I know you've got a very professional training program, but as a guy who used to have a Jeep, this has a certain appeal to me. How do you train out of some of the younger firefighters? Okay, this is just not about excitement and rushing around here. This looks like fun. Where's the discipline in the training to instill, this is your job, this is how it must be done, and there's no exceptions in terms of maintenance protocol or what it takes to run a professional department?
Well, we try to follow the state guidelines for brush fires. So, like right now, we're going to be offering S190 class or a PA and a PA 130 class, which are strictly for brush fires. The PA 130 class is actually hands-on and a little bit of classroom. The S190 class is actually all classroom and getting to know the elements of the fire for brush fires and the weather conditions on how to look at the way we'll make the brush fire go, and what they call flank or the head or the heel of the fire. It comes in depth with all. That's what the actual S190 class entails.
So as we walk over to a piece of rescue equipment over here, there's classroom time involved, there's discipline, there's testing, there's a knowledge of the equipment, as well as the kind of fires that you're dealing with. Now, we're looking at a rescue vehicle back here behind us. Tell us a little bit about what it does and how often it deploys.
This rescue here actually runs on almost all the calls in the township because it does multiple functions. We actually have a 300-gallon pump on here that has water to it. And it'll run car fires, motor vehicle accidents. We can actually, if we're out in the street already with this, we can actually go to a structure fire and deploy the hand lines and start the attack on a structure fire. It carries hose. We can do drafting from it if we have to. We also have medical equipment on here. This is one of our QRS vehicles also. So if a medical call comes in, we can take this.
So if I'm out in the community at John Q. Public, most commonly I'm going to see this piece of equipment deployed.
Correct.
Now, when I think of a fire department, many think of a structural fire. You're out there doing the brush fire, but a significant component of your work involves automobile accidents, particularly where there's entrapment, there's a threat of fire, extrication, cribbing, jaws of life. Could you take us, if you would, to the scene of the accident and the kinds of things that you're doing there?
We just had one yesterday. It was a head-on collision up on 562. It was actually pretty much right near our other fire station. And this was the first apparatus on scene. We actually had 2 individuals that were entrapped in the vehicle. We got cribbing off our truck, cribbed the vehicles. We popped the door to get the one occupant out of the one vehicle, and the other vehicle, the Mount Penn Fire Company actually assisted on while we were attending to the other vehicle. We actually used what people are familiar with, the jaws of life, but we have I guess you can call it the sister version of it, which is the AMCUS It's multiple tools. We have the O cutter. We actually have the spreaders, combi tool. We can deploy all of them all at once and operate off of them to cut a car apart, because everything is actually pre-connected to this truck with a hydraulic system on it already.
Been out in a junkyard setting, have utilized the equipment, and it obviously saves lives because it reduces the amount of time the person actually has to spend in the vehicle without advanced medical care. You mentioned cribbing. We want to stabilize the vehicle while the emergency responders are working on the car. Valuable, important, essential.
Very important and essential, because at any moment that car could actually start rolling away if it's not cribbed or stabilized while you're trying to extricate that patient.
Right. While we're talking about bells and whistles, we've got a ladder truck over here. And I know that in our municipality, it's a source of great pride and joy, and it's shared with other communities. Ladder is how long, Jim, and how often do you deploy it, even in its partial length?
The ladder itself is 95 feet. Now, that isn't the actual ladder length that's in the bed. The way they figure out 95 feet is actually from the ground up. Most people don't realize that. But we deploy this, I would say 50% of the time on structure fires. Just even though the house might not be on fire, but they actually get it up and in service just in case we have to use it at moment's notice.
We're talking a piece of equipment that's extraordinarily expensive, not only to purchase, but to maintain. And I know the state has some programs as far as low interest loans go. $1 million is a good ballpark number from what I understand.
Yes.
To purchase a piece of equipment like that. How much serviceable life are you looking for from this truck?
We're looking for at least 20 years of service out of this piece of vehicle.
All right, so 20 years, and how long are we in that calendar of 20 years of life?
This is a 2009, so we're probably looking for another 18 years, 17 years, I guess.
I was a part of a training program, and a ladder of similar length went out. Are there guys who are doing this for the first time and need a little bit of coaching in terms of the height? Is there an intermediate step that you take with them? Do you discern whether a person has the capacity to be up on this ladder for the first time? Walk us through that training.
We actually go out, some Tuesday nights we'll actually take this rig here and actually go out and train with it. Get whoever comes out for the training involved. We'll set up the aerial, extend the boom, extend the bucket all the way out as far as it can go, and we'll have them, some walk up the ladder, or they'll already be in the bucket, and we'll have it all the way up, and we'll see how they react to everything. And some people aren't comfortable on aerials, and we tell them just stick with the engine operations of the rescue.
It's kind of like, whoa, I've had enough of this, let me back down.
Yep.
It's not for everybody being on the end of that boom.
Yes.
All right, tree trimming, tree cutting, high wire acts are not for everybody, and this is a special piece of equipment. With regard to maintenance, how many hands are involved, whether shining something or checking PSIs and pumps? Everybody involved?
Usually everybody that's around gets involved in checking the apparatus out.
All right, and it's essential that be in a good operating order. And then in terms of a final inspection system, who is the final arbiter of that and say, this piece is ready to go? There's a number of checks, check-offs, and you're evaluating it constantly. We looking to Chief Jordan on that?
He relies on his crews that are on during the day or at night. We do 2 checks, one at night and one during the day with this apparatus, or any of our apparatus, I should say. And we also do a weekly check on them. The weekly check is the more in-depth one. We go through everything in the compartments, check all the fluids, make sure the brakes work, all the lights work, everything. And then our daily checks are a little bit less laxed, but we go through everything, and if everything checks out, then it's good to go.
It's a very special piece of equipment, and it looks like you're taking excellent care of it. We're going to take a walk now and look at a very special artifact that's arrived here recently in the Exeter Township area, and I'm very pleased that you took the time with us to share some insights on the apparatus, and so we'll head off in this direction now. Jim, this is a little bit more of a solemn setting here at the fire department. We've got a hunk of structural steel from the Twin Towers of 9/11 fame, and I know you were privileged to receive this last year in the 10th anniversary of 9/11. I know it means a great deal to the community. Could you share with us just a few nuts and bolts of how this piece of steel ended up here in Exeter Township in Berks County?
I know the process started back in 2008. They applied for some pieces of steel, and they've been working with the government on trying to get the steel. I think it was in 2011 we actually received the steel, but we only received notification that we were getting the steel a couple months prior to that. So we had a deadline to get down there, pick up the steel, and bring it back.
What was the pulse like in the fire department when you heard you were actually getting the steel? You'd planned, you'd petitioned, you did everything bureaucratically to procure the steel. But as some of you got to figure, hey, if this really happens, I'll be somewhat surprised. What was it like emotionally around here when you realized you're actually going to get the steel?
Around here, people were very ecstatic. Most of them were very happy and joyous that we actually got this steel, because this doesn't only represent the military and the people that passed away in it, but it also represents the fire department because of the 343 members that were killed that day.
Firefighters, EMTs, police officers, military, those civilians who died in the accident. And so moving forward, it arrived. What's been the response in the community? We've got houses right across the street here. Folks come up, they've touched it, they've had their picture taken against it. Have you seen some of that?
Yes, and we actually have people buying bricks. What we're standing on right now, they're all blank, but these are going to be actually all engraved, and people buy the brick but donate the brick to the fire company to have it actually set right here.
Are all the bricks sold?
No.
And how much does it cost to get a brick?
$30 a brick.
$30 a brick, and anybody out there who's interested in purchasing a brick can still do it.
Yes.
And they can make a check payable to the
Exeter Township Fire Department.
And I hope many of those watching this program avail themselves of that opportunity. And in the closing moments, I want to thank you, Lieutenant Herr. And this is Legislative Report with State Representative Mark Gillen, standing in front of structural steel from the Twin Towers of 9/11 fame. From the Exeter Township Fire Department in Rifton, we want to thank you for joining our program today.